Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the Connected Wellness Podcast. I am Rachel Ann. I'm here with the lovely Marianne, and we are so passionate about wellness.
Here in this podcast, we look at the ways our physical, emotional, and spiritual health is all connected, and how we can take better care of our whole selves holistically so we can live our best lives. We're really excited that you're here with us on the journey.
Yeah.
Welcome to episode 28 of the podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, y'all. We're happy you're here.
So, we're just starting off 2024, right? We've talked about our reflection of last year and what we're looking for moving forward. And there's a topic that just jumped out at me that I was again, it's very selfish because I need to talk about it and I need to deal with it. So I'm really hoping that I'm not the only one. But I am afraid that I may have an addiction to productivity, Rachel. So that's what I would like to talk about today.
Okay, gotcha. These are secretly coaching sessions for Marianne that she vulnerably is sharing with the audience. So
no, but
for
real, every single episode, I'm I need to unpack some things here and talk about this. So, but I really hope that it's not just me. Do you think it's just me that has this problem?
It totally is not. We'll get into it, but there's a whole system and structure of productivity and how we feel that pressure in life. So yeah, We'll get into it.
Thank you. Thank you for, validating my experience here.
Yes.
So before we get into that, let's do some wellness wins. What do you got, Rachel Ann?
The wellness one that I have is right now when we're recording this is we're recording in December, so right before the new year. And for a lot of entrepreneurs, this is Q4, quarter four of the year. A lot of us are actually slowing down and just really relaxing before we ramp up and begin quarter one for the new year. I am not, because I am launching 2 new things in January. And so this is a really busy time for me. And, we just celebrated Christmas. I just celebrated my anniversary. We celebrate Thanksgiving, all of the things. So there's a lot of things that are happening, and I have a lot of deadlines. I have a really long to-do list. And I'm very tempted to overwork. I'm really tempted to work more than the 40 hours of work that I do a week. I'm really tempted to just be let me just go until 10 p.m., stuff like that. In order to get all of these things done on time. Mm-hmm. But I'm actively saying, no, Rachel, do not overwork. You can finish this tomorrow. You are actually on the timeline that you need to be. You don't need to be ahead. You're actually still ahead, but you don't need to be more ahead than you need to be. So just really talking myself down from the pressure that I put on myself to overwork, to relieve my own anxiety, to say oh, well, if I just finish everything now, then everything is done. But no, then I will be really stressed out and exhausted and my body will ache because I overworked. So I'm actively choosing to not overwork. That is my wellness win. And I hope by January, I can continue to say that I actively decided to continue to not overwork. But that's my wellness win. No overworking for Rachel.
That sounds like a good, segue into today's topic. If
yes.
We can just continue to remind ourselves, I don't need to be freaking out about this, That's great. Good for you. I hope you can carry that into the new year. And I'm seeking balance. I think it's all about balance. We'll talk about the fact that productivity, of course, in and of itself is not a bad thing, at all. But you can't just go all the time, because you will eventually feel the consequences. So
yeah.
Good job.
Thank you. Thanks, Marianne. How about yours?
So, right before Christmas, Chris and I went on vacation. We went to Mexico. It was beautiful. I did post some pictures and videos. The water was gorgeous. It was a very quiet resort. It was great. But we did encounter a few hiccups or challenges, during that trip. Nothing major, but just enough to stress me out, on what's supposed to be a relaxing trip. But now that we're back and I was making some notes for our happy jar, which we talked about last episode. I am like actively choosing to focus on the good parts of the
Mm,
trip, right? Like,
mm,
because, I don't want to just look back on this trip and remember the bad things.
yeah.
I think we've talked about this before, that we are almost wired to remember bad things more than good things because it's like self-protective, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like, again, back in the day, our ancestors had to pay attention to danger, right? And they had to remember where the dangers were so that they would not, and die,
Yeah,
basically, right? And now our dangers are not quite as physical or life or death. It's just like stressors, right?
yeah.
Anxiety, things that we're afraid of. So I realize that, that sometimes I look back on things, and the one bad thing will stand out to me, but I'm like trying to
Mm,
just focus on the good parts of the vacation. Like, for example, like I said, the water was absolutely gorgeous. We like loved
mm,
being in the water every day. We saw so many different fish, like right there, close to
mm.
the shoreline. We didn't have to go snorkeling or anything, and we were able to like see puffer fish and like big silverfish and
Ah,
little tiny fish and
mm.
crabs and little snails, and it was just super cool. It was super beautiful.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm choosing to remember those, and then when we go to our happy jar, I will be able to remember them again when I read those
Yeah.
notes. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Marianne, that's so real. I'm sorry about whatever stressors happen, but I'm proud of you that you're like, let's look at this holistically. Yes, some stressors happen, but let me remember also how enjoyable it was because you deserve to enjoy your vacation and remember
Thank
those
you.
things. So,
Yeah.
actively remembering them. I love that. That's a really great win.
Thanks. Yay. Okay, so these, I know, again, I said it's like January, but like you said, we're recording here at the end of December. So these are our last wellness wins of the year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a whole year of wellness wins. That is so
Yeah.
amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. And I feel like if we compiled them all, like it's a way to look back and reflect on our growth, throughout the
Mm.
year. I kind of want to do that. I may have to
Yeah.
go back and compile all these wellness wins for myself, and just see like how far I've come,
Yeah. I love
That's
that. Let's
awesome.
celebrate our growth.
Yay. Okay. All right. Now for my free coaching session.
I am
If
ready.
you
Let's do
will.
this.
Yes. Why are so many of us so obsessed with productivity? What do you think is the core reason
um,
for that?
so I think it's rather complex. And there's a few factors that are coming to my mind. One factor is the world that we live in. So Marion and I were based in the United States. The United States is a very hustle bustle place. It's very like success looks like X amount of money and this type of prestigious job and this type of house and all of that. And there's a lot of judgment if you do not adhere to those standards. Also, culturally, there's a lot of pressures too to look and produce in a certain way. So there's that pressure, right? We receive that societally, that's not a word, socially, and like culturally. And then if we also think about our identity and how we spend our time. I forgot, I was trying to think about what episode we talked about this, but I forgot. But how a lot of us, we tend to be human doings instead of human beings. So for a lot of us, we actually distract ourselves from the things we actually need to deal with, from our trauma, our thoughts, our feelings, setting boundaries, coping mechanisms, whatever it is that we don't actually want to deal with. We distract ourselves from those things by throwing ourselves into work or things that are productive, as a way to just not deal with those things and avoid those things. So that's another big reason why. And then another part of it too is it's we fear judgment and comparison from other people if we are not doing the things that the other people around us are doing. And so it's like, oh, I don't want my friends to think that I don't care about my job as much, or I don't want my parents to think that I'm not serious about my vocation and all of that. So I need to prove to other people that I am productive enough, that I am enough in this way. So then there's also some pressure around there. So those are the main things that I see and I have observed and experienced in my life too. do. We're trying to avoid something or distract ourselves. We're trying to keep up with other people,
Mm-hmm.
comparing ourselves. There's some pressures we experience from family, friends, work, culture, all of the things. And it's kind of normalized to do that.
Oh,
It's not
definitely.
normalized to deal with our problems. It is normalized to run away from them and to hide them under some money.
Yeah.
So when we combine all those things together, we get a productivity addiction.
Yeah. Yeah, so I do think we can almost look at it as being a workaholic, but for me, they're not the same thing. Like you mentioned, like, pressure to get ahead in your job or make money or whatever. For me personally, my productivity addiction is not just about work. Like, I don't think I'm a workaholic at all. Like, I love my work and I take it
Mm-hmm.
seriously and I do my best. But for me, I just always have to be doing something useful, right? So whether it's
Mm,
work related, whether it's, cleaning and making my house better, whether it's taking care of someone that I love, whether it's serving in my church, anything that is useful or productive.
mm-hmm.
Again, it doesn't have to be income generating. That's what is my problem. And so I don't know,
Mm,
like, it's still, I think, pressures, like you said, wanting to be enough, which I think might need to be another episode. Um, so
mm,
yeah,
yeah.
that's what I noticed. And then also this idea of it being like an addiction. So like what happens? What's the mechanism of addiction? Like you do something like go shopping, take a shopping addiction. You buy something and like don't we get this flood of dopamine and it
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
feels good and it's like reinforced because we get that flood of dopamine in our brain and it's pleasurable, it feels good,
Mm-hmm.
so then you want to keep doing it. And then the problem with an addiction is like, okay, well, this little thing isn't going to be enough, I have to buy more,
Mm-hmm.
right, to continue
Mm-hmm.
getting that same dopamine hit. And I think it's the same thing because again, this can't just be me, but when I have my to-do list and I check something off, I get a rush of dopamine. I'm like, yes, like it's like definitely a pleasurable sensation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you think people can relate to that?
Oh, absolutely. I'm the same way. I love crossing things off and I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, yes.
So
Yeah.
like in that method, like, or in that manner, the reinforcement, the physiological reinforcement is what makes it kind of like an addiction, like that you
Mm-hmm.
just want to keep getting that reinforcement. And then like an addiction, you have to keep doing more in order to
Mm-hmm.
continue getting that reinforcement. So I
Yeah.
think that's kind of the problem. Is that yes, we have all these pressures, but like from a physiological standpoint, it's reinforced. Like, yes,
Mm-hmm.
maybe externally, but also internally. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
some of
Mm-hmm.
us more than others. I don't know, if it's a personality trait or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's what I think
Yeah.
is the problem for me anyway.
Yeah. There's a lot to it. If you were my client, I would ask you, how do you define what's useful and how do you define what is productive? And that's not to say that the things that you find to be useful and worth your time aren't that. They
Hmm.
are, but what is it about those things that require that much of you? And how much of ourselves are we putting weight on in identifying or pressuring ourselves with that thing? That's what I would say. So happy journaling on that question. This is not like your therapy session, but that's what I would say. And I think for a lot of people, especially when we're thinking about tasks like around the house or just like, I just need to do things. I need to like just always be doing something. I can't really sit still, right? We hear a lot of
Mhm.
people say that they have a hard time just sitting and watching TV, or they need to always be running around doing something. They like to stay busy. There is like for our friends who are neurodivergent, so those are people who have like a diagnosis, then the way their brain works may say that yes, in order for them to stay healthy, they need to be productive and busy in this way, and that's actually healthy for them. But for our friends who are not neurodivergent, so for our friends where there is that need to stay busy or productivity looks a certain way with these tasks, and it's not from a health perspective, then I think the question is, what's happening psychologically? What's happening feeling wise? What's the thing we're trying to avoid? And that's very real. As people, we're all trying to avoid something. Spoiler alert, we all do this. Congratulations, we're all in this together, right? We're all trying to cope with the world in some way, but in a way that is productive.
Hmm.
So, a lot of the times people find that cleaning is a great coping mechanism. It is. It also could just be a distraction, right? We're not going to say don't clean. You should clean. Cleaning is pretty great for your home. But if it's with the purpose or the intention to distract yourself or to numb a feeling or to ignore something, then it's actually not really healthy. You
Yeah.
know, and so I think it looks different for different people. And I do like that you identify the difference between like a workaholic and a productivity addiction. I think workaholism is like a spoke under the umbrella
Hmm.
of productivity addiction, but it looks in so many different ways, just like you identified. Is like, okay, I have the things to do. Let me just go ahead and do them. So
Yeah.
that's what I would say.
So, what you asked, kind of like why or what is it about those specific things that you find to be useful, right? It was kind of
Mhm.
what you asked. So, I read this quote that this really made me think, and I may need to be journaling on this for sure. So, this was a psychiatrist said this. We often think productivity means work. It doesn't. Productivity means to make intentional choices towards a goal. So that's like the phrase that like I need to highlight. The choice could be
Mhm.
to pause. The goal could be to replenish. Productivity could actually mean to rest. Right? Like so if being productive means to make intentional choices towards a goal versus like I hate to use the word or the term wasting time, but that's kind of the opposite to me of being productive, right? And
Mm,
that's how I know that I have a problem because I am always acutely aware of when I am possibly wasting time. And that like
mm,
drives me nuts. Like, oh, I can't be wasting time, you know? So, like, if I'm waiting for an appointment, I could at least be reading. I could be responding to an email. I could be, doing whatever. Like, I need to be doing something instead of wasting time. But this idea of it's not necessarily doing something, it's doing something intentionally towards a specific goal. So to me,
yep.
that means I maybe need to think about what are the goals, right? Like,
Mm,
so instead of
mhm.
just doing all of the things because I need to do all of the things, like, let's break it down a little bit. Like, what is my goal when I'm wanting to
Yeah.
do something?
Yeah.
And is that going to help me achieve my goal? And
Yeah.
we've talked about this before. I need rest to be one of my goals, because I love
Yeah.
that. Like that it
Yeah.
is productive to rest because that's a goal you need to replenish. You're not going to be able to go on, 100% speed at all times. Like that's just
Yeah.
not how we're built. So
Yeah.
rest is an important goal. And so you can intentionally make a choice to rest today, and that's being productive.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that. I think that's a really good example that you brought up of if you're like waiting for an appointment or something and you're like, okay, I must be reading or answering emails or something like that. Sorry. Um, I think the question you can ask yourself is how do you want to feel and what is the goal? What is the intention of being in that moment? So for me, before I before I go to the doctor, I actually like to sit in the waiting room and I like to decompress. I usually just got off the train. It's cold outside. I also want to think about what are the things I want to talk about with my doctor. So I pull
Mhm.
up my notes and I like type it in, right? How do I want to feel in this time? And that will allow me to say, okay, since I want to feel peace, what is something that brings me peace? Reading brings you so much peace. So that's a great use of your time. You
Mhm.
love to read. And it's also real if you're like, oh, I'm actually a little behind on emails. Let me answer like a quick one, right? And it's not going to cause you stress, and it's not going to cause you stress. Awesome. So I think that's where wisdom and speaking to somebody can be really helpful to say, oh, am I doing this because this is like a distraction or from like an unhealthy or from a productivity addiction standpoint, or am I doing it for other reasons that are actually fine? And then basically taking analysis of the different things that you are doing and wondering what is the intention of why you're doing those
Mhm.
things. I think that is really, really helpful
Yeah.
because you could be sitting reading and it's actually healthy. This is intentional. You're not distracting yourself. Another person could be doing the exact same thing and it's actually unhealthy because that's the method that they're using to distract themselves. But we don't know that until we take some time to dive deeper. And I love that definition of productivity. I think that's the most accurate accurate one, quite
Yeah.
frankly, of all of like the definitions that I've heard. And it's hard to identify, or it's hard to define productivity, so like I get it, but I think that's the most like accurate definition. It's like, okay, I'm intentionally making steps towards a goal, and I
Mm-hmm.
think there's even judgment about what the goal should be, right? Your goal shouldn't be to rest, your goal shouldn't be peace, your goal should be prosperity, right? These are all things that the world or culture or family or friends say, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in actuality, our goals should be what is in alignment with what God says about our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And God wants us to make sure that we are we are healthy and that we are at peace and that we are resting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just today, my verse of the day that I was pondering on in my devotion time this morning was, "Come to me, all you who are heavy laden, and I will give you rest," right?
Yep.
God wants to give us rest. So, yeah, rest is very much in line with what God wants for us. I agree. I think
Yeah.
you said that maybe rest, peace, some people might not see as legitimate goals. So, what if we
Mhm.
broaden it a little bit and say the goal is for me to function optimally? The goal is for me to be the best version of me. Then I really can't argue with the fact that that includes having some balance. That includes me resting at some point, because, again, we are not robots, right? We are
Mhm.
not meant to go 100% power at all times. It's just not the way that we are built. And God told us
Mhm.
that in the creation story, right? That God rested on the
Yeah.
seventh day. And I know we've talked about that maybe in our self care
Yeah.
episode. But yeah, so I think that, like, even if initially you have a problem with the goal being rest or relaxation or peace or rejuvenation or anything, if you really think about it, you can't argue with that goal, because
Yeah.
if I want to be the best that I can be, and resting now allows me to be more productive later. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
because I will be in
Yeah.
a better space to do whatever I'm doing, working, or, being with other people if I am rested now.
Yeah, I mean, rest is productive because literally your body's like, cool, thanks for giving me some time to relax, rebuild, some muscles, move some cells around. Thanks so much for
Hmm.
giving me that time, right? And then that productivity will allow more productivity to happen because then when you resume activity, you're doing it from a place of your muscles have had some time to relax and they are not as tense and things of that nature.
Right.
Um, so I'm a very big rest is productive person. That's something that I say far too often.
Yeah. You're not saying it enough for me, clearly, because I haven't learned that yet. But I'm definitely gonna work on that this year. So my, like,
Mm,
goal for the year, my word for the year is simplify. Maybe if I had
mm,
two, it would be simplify and balance. So, like, I'm very much
mm.
wanting to work towards that this year. And stay tuned in 1 year. We'll look back on the year. Let's see how I did with that. But yeah,
Yes.
so here's my question. How do we know? You kind of mentioned this. Like, we know it's maybe a problem if we're trying to avoid dealing with certain things, feeling certain things. Is there any other kind of clues that maybe I'm trying to be productive for the wrong reason?
Yeah. If you are not doing something and it is causing you serious distress, then that's a sign that there's something underlying going on. And I say serious distress, but I think people hear that and they're like, oh, okay, that means that if you have like a panic attack or if you need to go to the ER or something like that, that's serious, serious, serious distress. I think we should actually take it a few steps, a few levels before that and say, if you are finding that your day to day life is not what you want it to be, if you find that you are having distressing moments,
Hmm.
if you're having thoughts that are uncomfortable, potentially harmful, but if they're just uncomfortable, period, they don't even have to go in the harmful direction. If they're just uncomfortable, if they are negative, if they're not healthy, if they're not bringing you the type of things that you want your thoughts to bring you, um, And if you're just looking and saying, I just know that something is off. If your radar is like, I just know that something is off.
Yeah.
And so if you're experiencing things like that and you're realizing, oh, when I am doing 5 million things, I'm not dealing with all the uncomfortable things. But then when I sit down and I stop, I'm actually having a difficult time sitting. And there's a literally diagnosis called restless leg syndrome. It's when you literally your legs are so restless that you must be
Yeah.
constantly moving around doing something. So if you're noticing that it's really difficult for you to sit and rest, even for short periods of time, if you can't sit and watch a 30-minute TV show, if people around you are saying things, right? Because a lot of times we don't notice, but the people around us do. They're like, oh, I noticed that you don't like take many days off. Oh, I noticed that like you have meetings back to back in your schedule. Huh. If people are saying those things, and also if you just have this idea in your mind of, oh man, this is something that's really sad. Well, not going to think about it. Let me go clean the bathroom, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you notice that your to do or your response to the needs of your mind or your body is to do something else, and that makes you feel better, then there's a really good chance that there's some underlying things that need to be explored.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. It takes some like deep diving into your thoughts because again, if you're like, oh, I should go do this, like I have to stop and think, why? Why am I wanting to do this right now? Right? And what is
Yep.
again, what's the goal? And is that a valid goal? Is that something that's important to me and my values? Then that's fine, you know. But if
Mm-hmm.
it's because I just feel like I can't sit here, that I'm not worthy if I just sit here, right? I'm not
Mm-hmm.
valuable if I just sit here and do nothing for 10 minutes. That's a problem. So
Yep.
yeah, I have like a little bit of a list here. I mentioned, oh, let me go back. If we're talking about addiction, any
Mm-hmm.
addiction, if you stop the thing, right, the drug, the whatever, you're going to have withdrawal symptoms. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
I think this is one way we can notice if we have a problem. So, the withdrawal symptoms
Mm-hmm.
of not being constantly productive, if we have a problem, is like fear, right? Anxiety, depression, like super negative self talk, like putting yourself
Mm-hmm.
down because you're not doing all of the things. So if you notice those things, that if you're taking a moment to just stop everything and you're feeling those things, that's a clue,
Mm-hmm.
that maybe something is going on and you need to address that. Um,
Yeah.
the other one is like not giving yourself any sort of margins in your schedule, right? Like you said, back to
Mm.
back to back to back meetings. Oh, I have 5 minutes here. Perfect. I'm going to call so and so because I need to get that call. Like, no, just give yourself 5 minutes. Like, maybe you have to pee or
Mm-hmm.
something. Like, you don't need to schedule, everything back to back to back. Um, Multitasking, I don't know. Like, I'm like torn on this one because I do
Mm-hmm.
think it's a symptom, perhaps, of the addiction, though, that like, to feel like you always have to be multitasking.
Mm.
Like a big one for me is I rarely can just sit and watch something anymore. Like if we're watching something,
Mm.
I have to be stretching, I have to be walking, I have to be like moving, so it's like a time for me
Mm.
to be working on my physical health, and chilling kind of, and watching whatever. So I don't know. That's maybe not such a good thing. Like, yes, there's a time for me to be moving my body, but there's also a time to just
Mm-hmm.
sit still and watch a stupid Christmas movie, with my husband. Like, just
Mm-hmm.
there's a time for both of those. So I think the constant
Mm.
multitasking is perhaps indicative. The other one is, again, just looking at how you feel. So, like, do you see
Mm.
people who are like always hustling and talking about how busy they are? And are you like secretly
Mm.
impressed, by that?
Mm.
Versus hear someone saying, oh, I just decided to take the day off, I'm doing nothing, and you're like, ugh, that person is lazy, right? Or of course
Yep.
thinking that about yourself. So like think about your
Mm.
response to others and yourself when you do things.
Mm.
um that's again, I think, another clue.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I appreciate the confessional, Marianne. where yes, the like you must be doing something while watching TV or watching a TV show, movie, that tells me that there's some underlying stuff going on there, which is fine. You're a person. What I will say is our body our body deals with a lot of things, and it needs multiple outlets to express itself, to express and get out that energy, the toxicity, the whatever it is. So if you're bored, you could look at all of the research that shows that people who have a history of trauma, whether it's little t trauma or big T trauma, that's a whole different conversation about the difference between the two traumas. But if you're somebody who's experienced any type of trauma, whether psychological, bodily, whatever it is, the impact that it has on your body's functioning is very, very high. And when you don't deal with the trauma, it's going to be stored in your body and literally negatively impact the functioning of your organs and the different aspects of your body. Right? Chronic inflammation, that's a top thing. If you're someone who has dealt with trauma, you're probably chronically inflamed. Chronic inflammation leads to so many other health issues that are actually really bad. Inflammation, oh, we can deal with that, right? Like what we had with Dr. Mark, who came a few episodes ago. We can deal with inflammation. But if it's chronic and it's manifesting and it's growing year after year, it's going to manifest and grow into something that's potentially more harmful. And so the reason why I highlight that is because the trauma, it needs somewhere to go. It needs to be unpacked. It needs to be processed. It needs to be expressed. It needs to be healed. That is the same, though, for everything else. That's not just something we do for trauma. That's something that we do for every emotion and thought that we experience. If we feel sad and we don't deal with our sadness, the sadness just stays there. If we get angry and we don't express or go through conflict resolution, then the anger just stays there. And then we find that, oh, since I had an argument with somebody and that was never resolved, then as I'm walking down the street to the grocery store, I'm like, cussing at somebody for brushing my shoulder. Right? That's displaced anger or displaced emotion, really is what it is. And so I'm not saying that's what's happening for you in the stretching and the TV. I don't know. You can pray about it. You let me know. But that's like what it made me think about, is that your body's like, hi, we have so much we need to get out. Yeah. You're not letting me get it out, girl. So please let me get it out. No, we can't sit on this TV or watch this TV. No, we can't do whatever. We are going to move while we do this because I have so much to get out. That's something that is really common that I see a lot. And so I think that's one thing that's potentially interesting for people to kind of like explore. And like the other part of it too is saying, what is the worst thing that will happen? What's the worst case scenario if I sit here, I watch this TV show or this cheesy Christmas movie with my husband? Well, that means I'm not going to be stretching. Okay, if I don't stretch right now, does that mean that my legs are going to be impaired in some way? Does that mean that my arms are going to, be impaired? No, none of that. Okay, if I sit and watch this Christmas movie, that means I'm not going to be cooking dinner. Okay, do you have time after the movie to cook dinner? Okay. Yes. So then you cook after the dinner, right? Literally just talking yourself through that and saying, what is the worst case scenario that I'm preparing for? And is that actually going to happen? Most of the time it doesn't. Spoiler alert. But if it does happen, I can probably deal with it. Let's say, oh my gosh, Marianne, you should have been cooking dinner while watching the movie and you didn't do it. What's the worst case scenario? Oh my gosh, you guys don't eat.
Now, the worst case scenario is we eat cereal for dinner, and nobody's mad about that, actually. So
there you go. Yeah. And you literally just answered it for me. There's usually a solution to the worst case scenario. Okay, we eat cereal.
We don't have kids. It's fine. We can eat whatever we want for dinner. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think walking ourselves through that process, and even when we talk about distracting ourselves with cleaning or productivity or whatever it is, distracting ourselves from the emotions and thoughts that we're supposed to be dealing with, it's saying, what's the worst thing that could happen if I actually deal with this emotion? Most of the time we think it's going to be much worse than it actually is. It's like, oh, I'm afraid that if I express my anger, I'm going to hurt somebody. Okay. So if you are afraid that you're going to hurt somebody, then you call for support. you get a therapist, you get social support. You say, hey, I'm like worried that I'm going to feel so angry that I'm going to pop off on somebody. Okay, so you get support to deal with that. You have the right to access support in your life.
Mm-hmm.
So I say all that to say, I'm not trying to water down the seriousness of it, but I'm trying to highlight the point that there is a really good chance that you can deal with whatever that thing is that's happening that is making you say, oh, I must multitask. Oh, I must like distract myself through cleaning, through these many, many tasks or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you're allowed to give yourself access to support. That's something that you literally deserve. It's
Yeah.
biblical.
Yeah.
Jesus wasn't by himself. He literally was getting support from the Father to do his whole life. You think Jesus could do all that he could do without God? Jesus is good. He like, yes, like he is fully God, fully man. Let me not, I feel like the theologians are going to be like, oh my God, Rachel's saying that Jesus is not powerful enough. No, he is. He absolutely is. But he still is human and was like, God, like in my weakness, I need you to
Mm-hmm.
strengthen me. So if Jesus himself said that, girl, how much more do we need to say that?
He was
I'm done with
showing
my rant.
us
Thanks for listening.
how to do all of the things, is by
Mm-hmm.
accessing the power available to us through God. Yeah.
Amen.
Yes.
Very well
So
said.
um I'm just gonna say in response to your question again, like, what's the worst thing that can happen if I feel what I'm needing to feel right now? For me, it's not usually that I'm gonna hurt somebody, but
That's okay.
honestly,
Good.
that I'm thinking about it, like, perhaps this is too personal, but it's usually just like, it's gonna make me cry. Okay. Like, you know what I mean? If I think
Mm.
about this thing that's bothering me or whatever, if I feel what I'm actually like feeling and I'm pushing away right now, it might make me cry. Okay. Like,
Yep.
so what?
Mm-hmm.
Probably that's something that I need to do in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I bet if we talk to Dana again about somatic therapy, like there's healing in releasing emotions, right? Through tears, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
like that's probably a good thing, if that's my worst case scenario, but
Absolutely.
yeah, that's an interesting question. So if I actually deal with what I'm needing to deal with, what's going to happen? Probably something good most of the time. Yeah, unless again you're
Mm-hmm.
feeling like harming another person or yourself, that's a different story. You need to get some help. But
Yep.
for a lot of us, I think most of the time that's not the case. It's just unpleasant, right? I just don't want to deal with this. It's
Mm-hmm.
unpleasant right now. So yeah, that's an interesting idea. I'll definitely be thinking about that.
Mm.
So here's the deal. Again, when we talk about balance, and I said this earlier, productivity is not bad, right? Productivity in and of itself is a good thing. I don't think it's a bad
Yeah.
goal for any of us to have. But we want to balance productivity with being able to prioritize rest and prioritize what we need, right? So, how can we do that? One of the things that I was looking into, and we've talked about this before, probably with Dana and maybe in other episodes. I think I need some help with this, is really being able to listen to your body, right? To listen to what
Mm.
you need. So there are times when, yes, I need to get up and do something. You mentioned that, like, that is going to be good for me in that moment to get up and do something. But there are times when if I really listen and am in tune with what I need to just be still. I need to take a nap.
Mm.
I need to sit and read a book. I need to sit and watch a movie. I need to do nothing. I need to get a massage. Like, there are times when I really do need rest. So do you have any suggestions for how to get more in tune? That's something I feel like I've been working on, especially when it comes to like eating and moving. I've been trying to be
Mm.
more intuitive. We talked about this before, and I think I've gotten better with that, but still not with the rest part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard because the structure of our society and our world does not allow for moments of rest. And even like you're like, I don't want to cry. Girl, everybody hates crying. Everybody hates it.
Mm-hmm.
We all think we look weak and ugly and blubbery and we don't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Um we should have a whole episode about crying because I love crying. Um we'll have that Marianne confessional part too. So I say all that to say, a lot of these things are hard because it's just not naturally built into our system or our days. So we have to go out of our way to put that in. There's a few things that I think about when it comes to how to listen and begin the process of hearing the needs of our body and then responding to it. One of the easiest ways to do it is to set reminders on your phone to go off every hour, maybe 3 times a day, whatever it is. And at that moment, you ask yourself, body, how are you feeling right now? I know it's very cheesy. I know people are like, this is so new agey. No, it's really not. You're literally just like asking yourself, you're focusing, you're saying, how does my body feel right now? And like, I literally do it right now. So, Rachel, how does your body feel right now? My back hurts, probably because I didn't stretch this morning. My knee hurts because I have some issues with my knee. I have to go to physical therapy for it. Okay, so what can I do right now, though? Because I'm not going to physical therapy today. So what do I do right now? Okay, well, I could probably ice it. Okay, where do I have some ice anywhere? Oh, yeah, I have some in the freezer. So probably after this call, I'll go and ice it. I'll probably watch The Office because it makes me laugh. I'll have some more tea. I'm just feeling so congested, so I'll probably have some more tea. And then when I'm done with that, I will resume my to-do list. Simple as
Mhm.
that, right? And so when we pause to think and say, body, what is happening here? And we actually are taking the time to, some people even go like ligament by ligament. You could do that if you want. Say, okay, arms, how are you feeling? You're feeling good. You just do a body
Mhm.
scan. And as you're doing your body scan, you're saying, oh, I didn't realize that my back hurts. Oh, I should probably do something about it. Okay, so let me go do something about it. It's something that's reasonable, right? I can't go to physical therapy today. That's just not, sorry, it's not in the cards for me. But what is in the cards for me is icing my knee. That is something that I can do. And so the more you get in the habit of doing that, so like with the alarms and stuff, it's
Mhm.
really helpful. But after a while, you don't actually need the alarms because you just build a radar. You're building a muscle, right? Neuroplasticity. We have built a
Mhm.
new neural pathway. So you just learn to do that naturally. And you're just like, oh, I'm just gonna like check in with my body right now and see how I'm doing.
Yeah.
So that's probably the easiest, most tangible way to do that. And you will find that it's likely, oh, I need to rest for a little bit. That's the most common one because we do so much. And that's fine, but we just need to remember to rest. And so when we ask our bodies, hey, what's happening? It'll probably tell us, hi, I need to rest for
Mhm.
5 minutes.
Mhm.
And then we can do that.
I love that the first thing you said was my back hurts, and literally I was thinking my back hurts. So both of us, our back hurts. So yeah, I'm gonna have to address that when we finish here as well. But um, I like that a lot. And it's a practice. It feels very doable. It's like very attainable. It's not like, I don't think it's super new agey at all. The only thing that sometimes I find new agey, because I was just listening to another life coach talk about this, and she was like, okay, like say you feel stressed in the moment, that's the emotion. And she's like, well, where do you feel that in your body? Like, I feel like it would take me a long time, unless it's really obvious that my back is tight or
Mm,
my neck is tighter. And then she would keep going, like, well, is it cold? Is it hot? Does it feel like
mm,
soft, crunchy, brittle? Like, those things are kind of weird to me. Like, I could be like, yes, my back is sore. Every once in a while, I might feel like, yes, my jaw is tight, or, my stomach feels unsettled or something like that. But those like very specifics, to me, I don't know, maybe it just comes with practice, but I'm just like, what does that mean? Does it feel crunchy? Like, I don't is it hot? Is it cold? Like, I'm not hot or cold at the moment, so like, I'm not really sure. Have you gotten that detailed with your body scans?
I don't get that detailed. I have similar thoughts. I'm just like, I think it's helpful to like identify, oh, like my stomach feels really full right now and I feel really sad. So when I feel that like helps me know that, oh, when I feel sad, I'm gonna have this sensation in my body, right? Kind of like what Dana was saying. And then it's like, oh, okay, I will do something to alleviate the pain or the fullness that my stomach is feeling. But I do find that I do find that the wellness space tends to have a lot more intersection with people of different faiths, and I'm not seeing as much intersection with Christianity, and specifically the intersection of Christianity and people of color, which is why I was like, I'm just gonna go do it because nobody else is, and so here I am. But it takes a lot of time and practice because it feels
Mm-hmm.
weird. Like even the mindfulness that I just mentioned, it's really easy, but it feels so weird. If you've never spoken to yourself before,
Mm-hmm.
you're like, I don't understand, right? If you're not used to sitting and relaxing and saying, stomach, what's going on? That's gonna feel really weird. But the more you do it, the less weird it feels. And then when you remove the judgment from it, right? Instead of being like, this is so weird, like, I'm not going to be some like weirdo that talks to their body. No, that's not what's happening. So as we continue to remove that judgment and say, I'm getting in touch with what my body needs so that I can respond to it. That's essentially what you're
Yeah.
doing. And I don't think there's nothing wrong with that, but it just seems kind of weird because we're not used to doing that. We didn't take a class, right? In fifth grade, you didn't take a get to know your body
Mm-hmm.
class.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these things are very bizarre.
I think it's not weird. We're actually talking to ourselves all day. I think the problem is
Mm-hmm.
that we're not controlling the things that we say to ourselves all day. This is another perhaps I topic, but like we talked about our thoughts before, and that's the thing. Most of the time
Mm-hmm.
our thoughts, which what is that? It's just talking to yourself, are like automatic. So what you're saying is intentionally talking to yourself or thinking, and asking yourself, what is it that I need? So it's really not weird to talk to ourselves. We're really doing it constantly all of the time. We just need to
Mm-hmm.
maybe be more intentional about it so that it's
Mm-hmm.
useful and not something that's going to spiral us into, a bad mood or whatever. So, yeah, this is
Yeah.
my takeaway. So, my initial takeaway that I was thinking earlier was I need to like multitask less and just like let myself
Mm.
sometimes just sit there, just like have a moment.
Mm.
And in that moment, I can take your suggestion here and be like, okay, what's going on in my body? My back, how does it feel? Like my stomach, how does it feel? My legs, my head, my neck, whatever. And maybe I can identify, right now, I think I really need, some neck rolls or maybe a heating pad or um, now I'm feeling kind of antsy. I need to get up and move. I want to take a
Mm-hmm.
walk. I want to, do whatever. Like, so yeah, I'm going to put those two together. So multitask less. So I have moments where I can tune in to how I'm feeling. And also, like, that idea of productivity is intentionally taking steps towards a goal. So identifying the goal. So it's not just the goal is not just do something, but do something towards something that's important to me, work,
Yeah.
family, church, health, whatever it is, right? One of the things that are my core values.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I think those are really good takeaways. I think my takeaway is something similar. Um, but particularly about my self-talk, especially with the overworking and like the deadlines coming up, and like I'm 33 and I have a knee injury, like, girl, no, you know what I mean? So I find that I still do judge myself, like, "Oh, Rachel, you shouldn't have been doing this with your knee, you should have gone to PT years ago." Like, there should. And I find that I'm not speaking nicely to myself. And so I do want to change my self talk a little bit
Mm-hmm.
more, especially when it comes to certain things. I notice that there's still some barriers there. Um, and with that said, we would love to hear from y'all. Like, what are the takeaways from this episode about productivity? Was this also a confessional for you? Not just Marianne, confessional, but confessional for the people.
Yeah.
And what are your thoughts about productivity and what goes on behind the scenes there? We would love to hear from you. You could leave a comment below. You can DM us on Instagram. We're on Instagram at Connected Wellness Podcast. If you want to reach out to Marianne personally, she is Wabasaba on Instagram. If you want to reach out to me personally, I'm Real with Rachel Ann on Instagram. If you want to email us, we're there. You can email us at connectedwellnesspodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook at Connected Wellness Podcast. And we are so excited to begin 2024 with y'all about, I don't know, just all of what God has in store for us this year. with our wellness and how we experience him in all of the different dimensions of our lives. So I'm so excited. We're so excited
Mhm.
to do this and to say, all right, we're moving forward 2024. Yes, let's do this. Let's go.
Absolutely. Thank you for tuning in. And until next time, be well.
Be well, everybody. Bye.